Hey there. Well, I've talked about this book enough. Now it's time to finally show you the new gameplay expansions found in the 5th edition based Stargate SG-1 role-playing game. I feel confident in saying right off the bat that by the end of this video, the way you play some aspects of 5th edition D&D will be changed forever, and changed for the better. First, let me tell you why I think this RPG needs to be singled out and praised, and why Wizards of the Coast needs to take a very good look at it in its entirety, and particularly to the modifications and additions that this product have made to the basic rules of the game. I'm outright telling the parent company that these mods and additions absolutely need to be included in future editions of Dungeons & Dragons, and some of them should be included right now. So to start off, let's just go exactly what the hell Stargate SG-1 is. It's a science fiction TV show that spun off from a movie starring Kurt Russell and James Spader. It's the longest running and most successful science fiction TV show that Canada has ever produced, to my knowledge, and it's largely thanks to excellent writing combined with seasoned and exceptionally talented actors. The TV show went on to spawn 2 other spin-off shows with Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. The RPG product is about as official as it can be, produced by Wyvern Gaming with playtests and deep involvement with the actual cast of the show. It was funded by a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and I fully expect this RPG title to be supported with further supplements and a very active and engaged player and creator community. Time will tell, of course. This video is not a review of the entire book, though. I'm not going into the details on the races, character classes, and other setting-specific details of the RPG. I'm only concentrating on how the innovations to the rules mechanics of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons can be applied directly and immediately to your own games. First off, a major alteration to the basic 5th edition system is the tension level. This is a very elegant solution to a problem you may not have even realized that the game has until it's pointed out. Stargate SG-1 is a TV show. As we all know, some episodes are far more light-hearted and some are quite intense. Not every episode in a series is going to see the characters involved at serious risk of death. It's just the way things are with story arcs in episodic series. Tension builds and relaxes. It builds and relaxes, and the rule system for the game needs to accommodate that. I'll quote directly from the rulebook here, as the writing is very succinct. There are 5 escalating levels of tension used to set the tone of a campaign, episode, or scene, each associated with an increasing die type, from the 4-sided to the 12-sided dice. The overall tone and danger of the story are defined by its current tension rating. It sets overall encounter difficulty and lethality. Some beasts use the tension die to determine the effects of combat abilities, and conflict may be avoided or halted by players who manage the tension rating strategically. The person running the game should discuss the campaign's baseline tension die. A campaign with a low tension might be philosophical or comical, or both. Higher tension ratings usually accompany a grittier or more dangerous story. A baseline tension of D12 series would be very dangerous, with characters rarely surviving an entire season. Each episode, the person running the game sets the tension rating. Most episodes should adhere to the campaign's base tension, but some fluctuation is expected. A season finale might be 2 or 3 stages above the series' usual tension, while a comic or character development episode might be lower than normal. Occasionally, the DM might decide that a scene has a different tension level than the rest of the episode. Lowering an early scene's tension lets the episode open with some non-lethal action, like the player characters being attacked by a creature they must pursue. Raising the tension could be used to punctuate the presence of a particularly nasty villain in a scene, or the arrival of a new threat. The problem with the current rule set of Dungeons & Dragons is there is no universal way to adjust this base danger level, or tension, for the entire game system in one elegant mechanic. The DM has to adjust everything on the fly, making alterations to monsters that render their challenge ratings meaningless, nerfing the saving throws and damages of traps and hazards, and so on. The tension levels for each base die type also have descriptive one-word titles, so D4 is comedic, D6 is standard for the TV show at least, but in tabletop role-playing games of Dungeons & Dragons will usually be 1 tension level higher. D8 is growing danger, D10 is dire, and D12 is all is lost. It's not just the dice mechanics for saving throws, skill challenges, damage rolls, and so on. Each level will set a guide for how the active threats to the player characters will behave. When the tension level is set to D4, there is very little threat present. Combat is likely comical, with the player characters likely outmatching most opponents. Alternatively, the episode may have a little narrative weight, such as a character's side mission to help an old friend. So all attacks therefore are assumed to be non-lethal by default at this tension level. Even old foes use non-lethal methods. The encounters are unlikely to contain combat. However, the player characters should feel safe not looking over their shoulders all the time. Comedic in a theatrical sense means character banter and development takes the forefront. This tension level doesn't have to be humorous, but in Stargate SG-1 TV show it usually is. A good example of this would be the confrontation between Indiana Jones and Baylock, where Baylock has got him completely surrounded, could open up with all of those lethal darts of, nerve toxin and stuff, but he doesn't. He's basically just there to take the thing that Indiana Jones has and mock him. The D6 tension level is typical for the TV show. Some more narrative improv, performance and orientated tabletop RPG games would suit this, particularly those broadcast for audiences on social media, Twitch, YouTube and such. Combat is uncommon and assumed to be non-lethal for the player characters, though non-player characters are often at much more risk. This is the sort of tension level where it's pretty safe to get into a bar fight where nobody uses anything other than feet, fists, and improvised weapons such as a bar stool or a pool cue. The D8 tension level is what I would call the D&D standard, where the narrative sense of danger is rising. A fight might be possible if characters are pushed the wrong way, or the situation might just be a bit more dire than usual, like trying to decipher hieroglyphics while a death glider makes strafing runs outside the cave. Combat might be a reasonable outcome of events, but it's still non-lethal by default. The characters might get beaten up, trapped, or otherwise endangered, but sudden or unavoidable death is unlikely. The D10 tension level represents real danger, with aggressive foes ready to attack. High-stakes drama is also possible, such as negotiations with city magistrates or enforcers that intend to execute a character who has broken their laws. Attacks from enemies are assumed to be lethal at this tension level. The team can expect serious injury, and a player character death is a real possibility. Finally, the D12 tension level should be reserved for only the most dangerous of encounters, such as the last climactic boss fight of a campaign. Combat is assumed to be lethal at this level, with enemies out for blood. It's very possible that one or more characters will die. So, some examples of how the tension die is applied. A creature attacking with its razor-sharp claws might inflict 1d6 plus 2 rolls of the tension die to determine the slashing damage, or in an environmental hazard such as freezing cold water, when a character fails to realize the insufficient thickness of ice over a frozen pond and plunges through it if they fail a dexterity save. They plunge through and start taking a set number of tension dice worth of damage per round until they either manage to get out themselves with, say, an athletics check, or get some help from an ally. Another example would be the damage a disease inflicts each day, but there are more complicated and innovative applications, and for this, I'm just going to describe how air and space flight dogfighting between different vehicles works. So during aerial combat, pilots attempt to jockey for an advantageous position on their opponents. The initiative order within an aerial combat is determined by players declaring their actions and then resolving them. The pilots also earn position dice as they take actions, which may be spent to jockey for position during a round. During the encounter, pilots will earn position dice and spend those dice from their position dice pool. The characters also use these dice to resolve initiative. A position pool uses dice equal to the tension die. These TD are a resource that pilots use to represent their relative position to the other aerial fighters. Each pilot begins with a number of dice in their position pool based on their starting conditions of the combat, while special encounters may use any starting pools for the pilots the GM desires, and the following dice are commonly assigned. So +1 tension die for each pilot as a base. +1 tension die to the pilots or pilots of the vehicles with the lowest handling value. +1 tension die or +2 tension die to aircraft in an advantageous position at the beginning of combat, such as within a cloud or at a higher elevation in a gravity environment. Each pilot rolls all the dice in their position pool to determine their initiative order, starting with the pilot who rolled the lowest. Each character declares an action and any targets of that action. Once every pilot has decided on their action, they then resolve their actions from the highest initiative to the lowest, the reverse of how they declared those actions. After all of their actions have been resolved, the pilots then begin a new round by rolling their position pool again, thus changing their initiative order from round to round. Pilots will need to decide if they're going to do things like seek advantageous cover, such as a mountain range, ravine, or cloud cover, asteroid field, and so on. They can attempt to lock on with targeting equipment to assist their use of weapons. They can also assist other pilots by giving up dice from their own pool and handing them to their ally, which is risky for them, of course, and reflects realistic combat situations quite well, I think, with an elegant and really quite simple system. Ranges, with combat taking place in space with no atmosphere and almost unlimited visibility, at times can be kind of meaningless. For example, the only thing stopping a rail cannon from hitting the target would be the gravity pull from a nearby moon on its way to its intended destination. You could even take a shot so far away that it could take hours or even years to strike its target, particularly if you're firing an asteroid at a colossal battle station. Which brings me to the topic of technology levels. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition does include advanced technology right in the core Dungeon Master's Guidebook, and it has some handy suggestions for handling variable tech levels in play. But there is a fairly significant percentage of D&D players who seem to have an issue with high-tech items being included in games. Well, first, let me remind you that magic is very advanced alien technology. Let's take the Forgotten Realms, the planet of Toril, for example. Magic was not invented by humans on Toril. They have taken significant strides in advancing pre-existing technology that previous non-human civilizations inherited from other pre-existing civilizations, right back to the first sapient life forms that crawled out of the ocean. It's mainly just manipulation of energy via dimensional physics that we on Earth simply don't understand or have access to, most likely because these dimensional energies are highly variable from one star system to the next. I mean, it's all fiction at the end of the day. Magic is therefore a narrative invention, just as any highly advanced technology that doesn't exist yet is simply a narrative invention. We don't know if we'll ever be able to jump between dimensions, or even if such dimensions exist, or be able to travel faster than the speed of light, or teleport great distances, but it would be a rather dull high fantasy RPG if we couldn't pretend this stuff was real. Portraying made-up things within a logically consistent framework is what it's all about though, and I'm very impressed with the Stargate SG-1 improvement to the way combat engagements with modern and advanced long-range weapons have been handled. They've done this, again, very elegantly. First, they have split combat engagements into both close-range skirmishing or long-range firefights, and both can occur in a combat encounter at the same time. It's just a matter of proximity, the environmental conditions, and the weaponry used. On this example of a ruined temple map here, the square or hex grid represents spaces 10 meters or 32 feet across. This is close to the movement speed of a typical humanoid each round, so you can just move the characters from one square to the next, or in the case of a dash action, they move 2 squares. At this larger scale, groups of characters can occupy the same 10-meter space, and it's much easier to handle modern vehicle movement speeds and the kind of range modern or advanced weapons have. Unless a space on the map is totally flat, it is assumed all characters within it have access to half cover automatically. A target with half cover has +2 bonus to armor class and +2 bonus to dexterity saving throws. Battlefields rarely afford effective shots at a long distance due to the variety of environmental factors such as fog, smoke, rain, foliage, heavy rain, and so on. The maximum range of a modern gun is therefore mostly limited by visibility. Sometimes hurricane-strength winds can even cause bullets to veer off course at relatively close ranges. Characters in firefights have an advantage on their attack roll due to being at a higher elevation than their target, or by having their targets clustered into a firing alley where they are more visible along a specific line of fire. They can also have disadvantage on attack rolls where the targets are located with the bright sun directly behind them, causing reduced visibility due to glare, or in the case of really high winds, as mentioned. During the firefight, characters can choose to break cover and become deliberately exposed as a bonus action. This is going to draw fire and may allow characters to get to higher ground or some such, giving them a tactical advantage. Characters can instead take cover, which bumps them up to having 3/4 cover, providing +5 to the armor class and dexterity saving throws. Or even total cover if it's available in that 10-meter space, rendering them effectively untargetable. A character can also take the Overwatch full round action, picking a 45-degree wedge of the map to monitor. Once before the start of their next turn, any target in that monitored area that moves or takes an action, the character may choose to make a ranged attack against them with advantage on the attack roll, and may resolve the attack using the lowest cover level the target had during its turn, thus simulating an attack while someone runs across a gap or stands from cover to shoot. In order to shift from the firefight scale to the skirmish scale covered by the standard combat rules for 5th edition, a character needs only enter the same 10-meter space and engage the enemy. The Dungeon Master then basically zooms in on this area, switching to a skirmish scale where each space on the grid map is a 5-foot wide area. This makes it very easy to run both styles of combat at the same time, where characters can be shooting at distant targets in one area and getting into close range combat hand-to-hand in another. The players just zoom in and out as they go around the initiative order, declaring actions and resolving outcomes. Okay, next up, the The Stargate SG-1 system has added several new techniques for handling non-combat situations that often crop up during gameplay. These are called plot encounters, and they're increasingly important to the game as the recent trend in adventure designs is to provide options for adventurers to include non-combat resolutions and challenges for groups that would rather sneak, charm, or think their way through challenges rather than always resorting to violence. I think these innovations could certainly become the norm for future editions of the game, and I'm very interested to hear what you think of them, so let me know in the comments down below. First, not all characters have the same personality, particularly their general disposition, which can be split into three broad groups: the logical, the intelligence-based, the sympathetic, wisdom-based, and the charming, charisma-based disposition. These usually line up with the highest attribute score out of the three. These dispositions come into play with social interactions and plot encounters, the first of which is called the convince encounter. Instead of a simple skill check relying solely on a character's charisma check in the skills of deception and persuasion, a more challenging convince encounter can be used. A convince encounter occurs in a number of rounds with 4 phases per round. It officially begins with the acting characters rolling a mental initiative check called a moxie roll. The only difference between an initiative and a moxie check is that moxie is based on the character's intelligence or charisma score, rather than their wisdom or dexterity score. The lengths of time each round takes in a plot encounter can vary considerably. It may take minutes or hours to get a result on a convince encounter. Also, this kind of encounter uses determination points, a new resource for these encounters based on the character's proficiency bonus and a variable class-based bonus. Anyway, in Phase 1, the characters wager a set number of these determination points. Then Phase 2 sees the players choose which approach their character is taking based on the disposition of the target as far as they can guess. And Phase 3 is rolling an attribute check based on the approach taken, and Phase 4 is determining the results. This makes for much more interesting NPC interactions, for sure. Of course, players willing to forego rolls and just roleplay their way to success have that option as well. They always should. A diplomatic function encounter is typically played over a number of social rounds, as characters are given a chance to interact with one another in a structured environment. A diplomatic function isn't just for the pleasantries, however. It's also a vital opportunity for the player characters to learn about possible foes, a new culture, or to thwart a cunning foe. This type of encounter also uses determination points, except in this case, determination points can also be recovered by the characters involved. The encounter begins with the mental initiative, aka the moxie roll. Then the players declare their character's action. The Stargate RPG uses a reverse order for this, so the character or antagonist with the lowest moxie roll declares their actions first. Then the resolution of these actions occurs from the highest moxie order to the lowest, which makes perfect sense. I'll tell you why. It's about reacting and responding faster, and about guessing what the opponents and allies are going to do during the round. A person displaying outstanding wits and social skills will demonstrate intuitive genius, which makes it seem just like everyone declared what they're going to do during that round before they made their own action. So try this out the next time your players are going into combat with a monster with a very high intelligence attribute. It will seem like such an obvious fix from a simple little change. Anyway, in diplomatic encounters, the characters can choose from the following actions. Ingratiate, in which your character is pleasant, focuses on the event itself, or otherwise attempts to be liked. This regains them one of their spent determination points. Assist is helping out an allied character to provide them with advantage on any ability checks when their actions during the round are being resolved. Persuade is when your character attempts to change a person's mind on a subject and otherwise influences their opinion. During the action resolution phase, the character's approach is tested against the non-player character's disposition and depends largely on if the non-player character is just someone attending the diplomatic event or is an actual antagonist whose goals are in opposition to the player character's goals. Obfuscate is the act of concealing crucial information from foes, typically by avoiding direct questions, but also through distraction. The player needs to make a DC 20 deception check. If successful, all checks to inquire about a topic of your choice for the remainder of the round suffer from disadvantage. Inquire is the opposite situation, where the character is seeking specific information during the round, either by finding an inoffensive way to ask directly or by seeking information that would confirm their suspicions. And finally, thwart is where the character is focused on preventing another party from achieving their goals. When you declare this action, you must have at least one determination point left to spend on the action, and you must specify a character and diplomatic action you wish to hinder. Infiltration involves the characters attempting to achieve their objectives without raising the alertness of their opponents. It all hinges on the 5 alertness levels. These are oblivious, suspicious, investigating, alarmed, and chasing. I won't go into too much details on the infiltration mechanic. It's fairly straightforward. The interrogation encounter, the GM begins the interrogation encounter by secretly determining the subject's threshold. This is the maximum number of hours of interrogation a subject can withstand before one or two things happen. They break or they harden. If a non-player character breaks, they will then tell the interrogator anything they might know, which is often the goal. However, doing so also comes with the risk of being tricked. When a character hardens, they have accepted their fate and are willing to suffer whatever consequences the team members threaten, including death. However, before the threshold has been reached, the team has a chance to extract information that can be reasonably certain is accurate and true to the best of the subject's knowledge. But the trick is, you don't often know when they've reached that threshold, so it's kind of a gamble. Research and development encounters, or R&D, can range from the group attempting to retrofit an enemy transport for combat to long-term development of new or improved equipment. An R&D encounter is special as it can be tracked over many sessions within a campaign and result in very real benefits. A traversal encounter is designed to make traveling long distances into a challenge or to serve as a framework for other challenges. Unlike other encounter types, traversal uses cards. A deck of playing cards will do, but many players will also have land cards from other games that feature common terrain elements. Magic the Gathering is a good example. Additionally, traversal encounters do not use initiative or moxie, as the team is just assumed to be moving as a cohesive group. You get more clarity if you pause and look over the images on the screen. I'm just giving an overview mostly here. Oh yes, I should also mention that there is a system for handling pursuit as well, something I've always struggled with in the 5th edition rules. The pursuit begins with each character rolling for initiative to determine their order of action. Then each character takes turns in initiative order taking actions. During a pursuit, each character gets 2 actions plus 1 bonus action. They can take these in any order they wish, but each must be completed before the next is declared. 2 key elements make up the way this works. First, the pursuit always has a lead character setting the pace. This can shift and change during the pursuit. Second, distance is divided up into close range, trailing range, and far range. Close range characters can attack each other with melee and ranged attacks. Those with ranged attacks can also attempt to attack from a trailing or far range but are at a disadvantage on their attack rolls. A character in the lead position must spend an action to maintain their lead. If they don't, the character with the highest initiative result on the next pursuit round will catch up if they are at close range or become the new lead in the case where everyone is racing towards a set objective. A lead character may spend an action to either change course or attempt to evade and escape. Changing course requires a DC 20 perception check. On success, the lead character can choose a type of obstacle the pursuers must overcome in the next round. This could include an acrobatics check, animal handling, piloting, and so on. Failing to overcome an obstacle can see the pursuers drop back a range increment. In some cases, they may also be halted completely or even suffer some damage. The lead can attempt to escape by making the round's obstacle check or stealth check contested by the insight or perception check of their pursuers, who are either in close or trailing range. All enemies that do not beat the lead's result are moved back 1 step, maximum far range. If all characters are at far range banned after this action, then you have evaded your pursuers. If this does not end the chase, then the character with the highest initiative becomes the pursuit's new lead. Any character in a pursuit may also take one of the 6 general actions. These are attack, evasive maneuvers, gain position, halt, take the lead, maintain position, or seek better way forward. I'm trying to keep this brief so I won't go into every option in great detail, but it's not complex. Finally, there are some new basic conditions you can apply to your characters during the game. They have added the diseased condition. This is different from the poisoned condition in that a character who has the diseased condition may not heal ability score damage until this condition is removed. Healing hit point damage is not affected by this condition. With the poisoned condition, a character simply suffers disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. It's very non-specific, and the penalty is actually much harsher than it needs to be at times, particularly as a lot of different things can inflict the poison condition. A character with the new distracted condition is open to the next attack. An attack that targets a distracted character gains advantage, and the distracted character suffers disadvantage on strength, dexterity, and constitution saves. Once an enemy is attacked or forced to make a save, it is no longer distracted. This condition therefore can only ever affect one attack or save and then ends. A character with the new entangled condition has their movement and range of motion hindered, but not completely obstructed, as a restrained creature. Reduce the character's movement speed by half. In addition, the character suffers disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. A character under the control of another entity, or sometimes a device, such as a cursed magic item, gains the new possessed condition. A possessed character's actions are determined by the possessing entity. Typically, the character is aware of all their surroundings, but is unable to control their physical actions. This seems like a bit of a no-brainer, but it's not officially a condition in standard 5th edition rules, and it needs to be. A character subjected to an environment or situation where they can't breathe can now have the suffocation condition applied to them. A suffocating character must make a constitution save at specific intervals and constitution saving throws of a set difficulty class, or DC. These are split into nuisance, such as very high altitude that requires a daily saving throw at DC 10, unhealthy, such as an environment with dangerous levels of carbon monoxide, in which the DC 10 saving throw must be made every hour. If the area is full of smoke, the environment now becomes unsafe and requires a DC 15 constitution save every minute. And finally, a character thrown into the vacuum of space is now in a deadly environment that requires a DC 15 saving throw to be passed every single round. Technically, all of these situations count as a form of suffocation. All of them can have potentially deadly result, so each time a character fails the required save, they suffer one level of exhaustion. The rules of a character holding their breath and the length of time before they die of suffocation can also be handled the same way as listed in the standard 5th edition rules. There are no changes, we just have some more options for diverse situations this way which are oriented around the environment, so outside of the player's control, sort of. Finally, as you would expect in a science fiction game, they've included the new weightless condition. A weightless creature can effectively fly, as long as they have something to push off from. The character has a fly speed of 20 feet or 6 meters, but can't turn, accelerate, or decelerate without another object, even a floating object, to push off from. A character who begins moving in zero gravity does not stop until they reach another surface. The only exception is if they are both in zero gravity and inside a liquid environment or an atmosphere with wind pushing against them from a set direction, in which case they're going to be slowed, stopped, or even propelled due to friction or drag. Okay, there's a lot more packed into the book, obviously, but I thought I'd just bring these specific innovations regarding the very widely played 5th edition rules to your attention. You can decide for yourself if you want to try them out in your games, and if you see them included in the next edition of the game, now you'll know where they came from. If you enjoyed this video, please share it on social media and let your fellow 5th edition players know about it. I don't often ask you to do this, but it's not my usual sort of content, and I think it's in danger of sort of slipping under the radar with my usual general audience. So because it's actually useful to the hobby as a whole, in my belief, I'd really appreciate your help in boosting the signal and getting the Stargate RPG the attention it really deserves. It's a very good product. Even if you're not a fan of the TV shows, the book would be able to handle a campaign where the characters stumble across the ancient portal networks of the Batraki and the lost Imiskari Empire with ease. Just add in all the pre-existing magic rules and expand all the new character classes, equipment, spaceships, and so on from this book. Maybe throw in Arcana of the Ancients from Monty Cook Games. Grab the core books and you're completely covered and ready to go. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you would like me to cover more on this book or take a look into other third-party publications and the innovations they've developed for the 5th edition rule set, let me know. In the meantime, as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.